Damn, turns out the Blues Brothers were right. It's cheaper to support her. I owned my own business and she didn't work, so alimony was a given. I had two girls I loved more than my own life, so there was alimony and the pain of never seeing them. Plus, if she really wanted to mess with me, she could take half of my business in exchange for alimony. I'd end up having to survive on 30% of what I was making. I walked out of the law as depressed as hell. As usual, Charlene was 3 steps ahead of me when I caught up with her. I've been doing this for 8 months now, and it hasn't hurt us. He's a damn good lover. No better, no more, just different. I don't think I could choose between you two if I had to. But think carefully before you do anything. Go see a lawyer. Your life is going to be hell if we break up. I'll make sure of that. I stared at her as she sat quietly on the couch describing my new life. Who was this woman? Surely she wasn't my wife. The woman I'd lived with for 14 years? The woman I'd depended on and trusted more than I'd ever trusted anyone in my entire life? At least now I won't have to sneak around. You'll still get the lion's share of my time and affection, but I won't neglect Jim either. He has needs just like you. I'll work out a schedule. That was all I heard before I got up and walked out. She followed me with a squeal until we were on the street, but immediately stopped talking when she saw Mrs. Roseman, a sweet old lady who lived 2 houses down from us. I smiled and nodded as Charlene turned back to the house, hissing, "Get your ass over here, now!" She watched me leave. I had been gone for 2 days. The smirk on her face when I returned almost made me turn around. The girls were completely enamored with me, and I loved them until bedtime. They were growing up fast. They were 13 and 11. After I saw the lawyer, I decided I would stay out of the way for now. She brought me a beer after they fell asleep. I put it on the table. I'll be damned if I'll ever drink anything she gives me again. I'm glad you came to your senses. I knew you would. We'll live our lives the same as before, and no one will know anything. The only thing that will change is that I have a date one weekend, and I'll be coming home really late. But I'll be home so I don't worry the girls. She leaned back in her chair, a familiar smug expression on her face. I quickly knocked it off her face with the speech I'd rehearsed. Who says I've come to my senses? Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to live here for the next 4 years and 8 months until Marissa turns 18, and then I'll be gone. Darcy will be a little over 16, so she'll hopefully be fine. Maybe she'll decide to come live with me. Either way, I'll be gone. I paused to catch my breath and started again before she could respond. Now sloppy seconds will be in my past. If you dumped that asshole tomorrow, I still wouldn't share a bed with you. It's gone. Forever. I have a habit of not sleeping with whores, and a woman who has fun with other men while married is exactly that. I am moving into a spare bedroom and will not discuss the matter any further. However, I do not plan to remain celibate. I have my own needs, and while I won't be looking, at least for a while, I won't refuse if offered unless she is married. I would never do to some poor soul what you are doing to me. Also, you better get a job or have your lover pay for your needs. The girls will get whatever they want, but anything above living expenses will never go into our joint checking account again. I knew that last word hit me hard. Charlene had never seen a sale she didn't like. Her closets, yes plural, contained clothes she never wore. She was gradually turning pale, but now she was furious. You asshole. I still love you and want to share a bed with you. This is just ridiculous. Things are going to stay the way they are. That's not an option. Now go get ready for bed. You know, if things don't work out with your mistress, you'll be popular at Patterson in Maine. Maybe you should think about that when you run out of play money. On the corner of the street in our small town, men would gather to find a date for the night. She ran off to the bedroom, remembering to lock the door. I waited a few minutes and opened it. She was lying on the bed with the phone in her hand. Startled, she dropped the phone and I, realizing who she was talking to, snatched it back. Hey, asshole. I have your number. I'll have your address soon. We all track you down sometime and we can talk about what we have in common. Don't worry about me hurting you. Of course, you won't want to have a permanent relationship with her, knowing that she'll cheat on her lover at the first opportunity. He hung up and I put the phone in my pocket. She had already recovered and was about to leave when the girls showed up. They looked at the cracked door frame and asked what was wrong. Oh, you know that door has been sticking lately? I think it's attracting moisture somehow. I'll fix it tomorrow, and you guys go to bed. Charlene didn't utter a word. When they left, she started to go in, but I stopped her. I'll keep your phone until tomorrow. And yes, I'll be checking your account on the computer. Good night, she hissed at me as I walked away. Good luck to you. My accounts are locked up tighter than Fort Knox. You're not getting anything, asshole. I grinned, knowing she'd forgotten about the keystroke logger we'd installed on the computer as soon as the kids were old enough to use it. I locked myself in my room, activated it, and pretty soon the printer was working. I had to add paper, but I got all her emails, all her search terms, and everything she had bought in the last year. She was stupid beyond belief. Better yet, he worked for the county as a permit checker. They met when Charlene went to get a permit to build my workshop, which was code word for man cave. Whenever the estrogen in the house got too strong, I would sequester myself in it, playing pool or watching sports on the 50-inch TV. I even had cable TV hooked up. She had to come back twice when I added things, which led to flirting, coffee, lunches, and she didn't seem to fight it much. In some cases, she took the lead. I locked up all the printouts, sent the photos and videos to my personal office computer, and went to bed, falling asleep surprisingly soundly. I got up, wide awake, at least it seemed that way to the girls, and made breakfast while they chatted about school, boys, music boys, which boy band was the cutest and which boy band had the best songs. It all blended together, and I hardly paid attention. After all, they were too young to seriously do anything about it, thank God. Marissa, a 13-year-old girl, was starting to develop, and the boys noticed it. We let her walk with groups, supervised by one parent or the other. Of course, they would pair up, and we would let them as long as they didn't do anything stupid. We did this in hopes that when they finally reached the age to date, they would have a little experience to lean on and not do anything stupid. Darcy, or Echo as we called her, because everything Marissa said she repeated at 11 was still too young for such outings. But we made sure they had plenty of opportunities for supervised socializing. This was all on top of sports practice, dance lessons, band, and drama club. One or the other car was always on the move. They were discussing their afternoon classes when I dropped the first bombshell. Sorry, girls, I have new responsibilities at work, so Mom will be your main chauffeur for a while. As she's not working, I'm sure she'll be able to be there for you, right, sweeties? If looks could kill, I would have been reduced to a pile of ashes. Instead, she told the girls that they might have to ride with their friends sometimes. Why? What could be so important that you would leave your children to their own devices? If you need something done, you have all morning, don't you, girls? They instantly agreed. Yeah, Carol's mom is kind of creepy and Jenny's dad is staring at us. Please, Mom? Carlene was puzzled, and she didn't relent until they left. It seems I was right. All her little dates happened during the day. Her lover had to work. She started as soon as they got on the bus. If you're thinking, that's it. That's the difference between you and me. I think, and it usually comes with a big head. Lately, all your mental functions seem to be centered in your ass. Better start using your head while you still have a chance at kids. One more thing before I go, I hooked the house up to sound and video. Get that asshole in here, and it'll all be online in an hour. Damn the consequences. Have a good day. She was still trying to talk when I walked out the door. Over lunch, I watched the videos, watching her freak out, ranting, and trying to find the cameras. Luckily, even I didn't know where they were. The guy who installed them for me said if I knew I could give them away. I did manage to listen to an interesting phone conversation, though. Several, actually. The first was addressed to her lover. He's being a total asshole, baby. He's ruined our afternoon, and he says he's going to pull the plug. I checked this morning, and he's canceled all my cards. Our bank balance is $280, and the $200 electric bill is due today via automatic transfer. We may have to resort to Plan B. He seemed uncomfortable with Plan B, whatever it was. Before we go that route, let's give it a few days to cool off. If we drop them now, I'll be on the hook just as badly as hubby, so we won't gain anything. Obviously, that wasn't the answer she'd hoped for. So much for love, huh? You solved the problem by allowing everything? How the hell am I supposed to do that, she said. He protested loudly. I do love you, but let's be practical. If we leave our spouses, everyone will know why. We'll be broke, you don't have a job, and mine is nothing to brag about. That way, until we pull the trigger, we'll be living in nice houses. You'll have everything you want, including me. We need to take it slow. I know he's ruined your afternoon, but we could meet at lunch. We won't be ideal, but we can make it last. Where can we meet? He ditched me, so I can't pay for a motel room, and I'm not sleeping with you in your office. Let's do it at your place. Not a good idea. I can't find anything, but he says the house is wired, and if we meet here, it'll be on some amateur site in less than an hour, and I believe him. No, we just have to stop and give him a chance to calm down. Things got a little heated after that, and when they finished talking, she sat there with a confused look on her face. Perhaps the perfect life she had envisioned for herself had been stifled by reality. But I knew her, and realized that if she had made a decision, hell would freeze over before she changed it. So stubborn was she. I smiled when I checked on her later. She was sitting at her computer, having just realized I had locked her out. "Bastard!" she yelled after about 15 minutes. Bastard! She listed all the swear words. I was a little impressed. I didn't realize she knew so much. I decided to tease her a little and called her. Before she could speak, I started the conversation. "Hi, honey," I said, my words literally oozing sarcasm. "Are you having a good day? You don't have to fiddle with your computer anymore. If your words are to be believed, I have it locked up tighter than Fort Knox. Oh, another tidbit for you. By the end of the day, your phone will be disconnected. But don't worry, I ordered you a new one. It'll be here tomorrow. I hope you like it." "You bastard!" was all she had time to say before I hung up. The rest I heard through the surveillance equipment my geek buddy had set up while she was having fun with Loverboy just after I discovered them. She smiled when I gave her the new, best-in-class phone that night, and the next day I heard her rant in real time when she tried to use it. It had a safety feature designed for children, which was very helpful to me. She could only call the school, my office, my personal phone, our doctors, her mother, my parents, and 911. Any attempt to call any other number would cause the phone to disconnect for 30 seconds, after which it would reboot. She discovered this as soon as she tried to call her lover. After the phone rebooted, I called her. "Hi. I guess you've already guessed that the phone doesn't work except for preset numbers. It's kind of hard to get in touch with a sweetheart without a phone and a computer. I'd apologize, but unlike you, I'm not in the habit of lying. Now that you have a free day and half a day, I have a suggestion. Get a goddamn job. You'll need one if you want to go shopping. I'll buy the kids whatever they need, but you're on your own. Maybe you'll finally wear those clothes that still have tags on." I hung up the phone again before she started something interesting. When I got home, it was very frosty. She had a hard time controlling herself around the girls, but once she was sure they were asleep, we went to the basement where she screamed and threatened all sorts of nasty things until she ran out of breath. All I did was smirk. Deciding to change tactics, she burst into tears. "He's honey. Stop being mean to me. I don't deserve it. Please understand I didn't do it on purpose. It just happened. He's just a fling. I'm sure sooner or later we'll get tired of each other and I'll go back to loving only you. It didn't hurt you before you found out, and it won't hurt you now. It's only a few hours a week. The rest of the time I'm all yours. Come to bed with me tonight. Let me prove to you how much I still love you." I think I shocked her when I laughed. I looked on the computer for excuses for cheating. One website offers a book called The Cheater's Handbook. It gives all kinds of advice on how to handle affairs and has a whole section on how to deal with the consequences if your spouse finds out. You just used a lot of excuses. It just happened. It's not going to affect us. It's just an affair. It'll be over soon. And the best part is threatening to destroy his world if he doesn't agree. I watched the conflicting emotions run across her face. Before she could speak, I started again. "Let's stop for a moment. Let's say I agree to your program. What does that do for me? I will still pay all the bills, do all the things a married person does. The only difference is that I will have to share with you. I have to say, as a businessman, that doesn't sound very lucrative to me, does it? You get to have fun with someone else and I just work and wait for you? That's not going to happen. Since you've announced an open marriage, I'll be looking. There's this really nice sales rep who comes in once a month. She's a gym rat and runs marathons. She showed me a picture of her during her last race. I think when she comes in next week, I'll take her out to lunch and see if she's interested. I know she sees my ring, but I'll just explain that we have an open marriage and you've had a lover for almost a year now. Who knows? She seems like a pretty liberal girl." I knew the jab about solids had hurt her. After having 2 kids in a few years, she was a little rounder and a lot softer than she had been when we got married. Of course, all she had to do was get off her butt and go to the gym instead of the mall. Yeah, it was bound to happen. She looked shocked. "Why?" Why do you need someone else when I'm single? You have to understand, honey. I still love you, and the thought of being with someone else upsets me. I answered her in the same way. I've been free for 16 years, but that wasn't enough for you, was it? Do you think I jumped for joy when I found out you were having fun with me? There's a word for guys who let their women have fun with others while remaining faithful, just as there's a name for women who have fun with their husbands. The Slutbite Express is officially derailed woman. Might want to think about that. I'm going to bed. At least one of us has to work for now. She was still hissing as I left. Not being a complete idiot, I knew I needed a plan and fast before she really started trying to ruin my life. I had an old friend, our neighbor's son, who was a bit socially awkward as a kid. We were the only guys on the street, so we gravitated towards each other and even became friends. He was mildly autistic, high-functioning, and had a bit of a knack for computers and abstract problem-solving. If anyone could find a solution to my problems, it was him. He had been developing computer games since he was 14 and had sold his first one at 16. Now he was in his 30s, still living with his mom and dad in a 10,000-square-foot mansion. His fortune was somewhere around 60 million, and thanks to the success of his new game, he was literally rolling downhill. Oddly enough, he was married to an old man who was a little bit more than a man. He was married to another high-functioning autistic woman who I had introduced him to a few years ago at one of the few parties I threw. She was the daughter of one of my biggest clients and usually led an almost reclusive lifestyle. But after spending most of the day at the spa, she insisted that her father bring her, telling him that something important was going to happen. Although God had been a little stingy when it came to her brain, he made up for it with her body and face. She was insanely beautiful. Glancing at my friend Harry, she took his hand and asked, "The 17th of June?" He just nodded and continued talking to another guest for another minute before tapping his glass to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite you all to our upcoming wedding. The date is June 17th, and it will take place at—" He looked at June, and she smiled, taking his hand. "At Emmanuel Lutheran Church on 2nd Street in Broadville." Harry just nodded until someone asked him to introduce his fiancée and tell him how they met. He blushed slightly when she answered again. "I'm June Allison, and we met right here in this house at a party." That was the whole story, except she didn't say it happened right now at this party. She told him what kind of ring she wanted, and the next day he handed her a credit card. She took it from there. They had been together for 8 years. Their daughter was 7 years old, and my girls cherished and nurtured her like she was the little sister they dreamed of having. It wasn't unusual for me to come home and see a Lexus SUV in the driveway, and the driver waiting patiently in the kitchen, drinking coffee and talking to Charlie. At my appearance, she brightened, smirking. Shanna was a black woman, very attractive, ex-military, having served 2 combat tours and holding black belts in 3 different disciplines. She was on a local law enforcement-sponsored pistol team and regularly won trophies. At one time, she worked for me. I thought she was brilliant and very good at what she did, but I could tell she was bored to tears most of the time. One day, June came by to talk to me about some social event they were having. She showed up unannounced, as was her habit, and I was in a meeting, so Shanna kept her company. By the time I got out of the meeting, I had lost an employee. Everyone ended up with a win-win. Shanna had taken up residence in the mansion, in a small apartment with a separate entrance. For all their wealth, Harry and June didn't go out much, and Shanna was about to quit again due to boredom when some junkie decided it would be a good idea to kidnap some rich guy's kid for money. He succeeded for about 3 minutes, after which Shanna blew his head off as he tried to carry a drug star off the property. The case was hushed up, but he was armed and surveillance footage shows him waving a shotgun around trying to carry the child away. She was let off with a warning, and from that day on she became a bodyguard nanny for Star. A couple of times the girls went on vacation with them to exotic places. We were invited, but Charlene always found a reason for us to stay home. Harry was surprised, but June wasn't. I saw it coming. She seemed distracted the last few times I was around her, and at our last party I caught her in the garden sitting very close to another guest. She recoiled when I saw them, and I had a feeling I had just missed her kissing him. When she saw me, she almost ran back into the house, and she stuck to you like glue for the rest of the evening. I wanted to say something, but what? Maybe she was kissing some guy. Maybe she wasn't. It wasn't enough. I thought back to that night. In events like this, we usually split up, enjoying the opportunity to socialize with different people. I noticed her absence, but assumed she was in another part of the house as she suddenly appeared and stayed by my side for the rest of the evening. They pondered over my problem, and we had a long conversation. What exactly do you want, Jack? First of all, I want my girls in my life. That's the most important thing to me. Beyond that, I wanted to regret what she did. It's over between us. She doesn't realize it yet, but when she does, I fully expect things to be awful. I don't want to find myself without money and alone when the dust settles. Nodding, he asked how big my house was. They'd been there often enough to know, but he didn't ask if he had no idea. We got the house at a very favorable price. It was in an older neighborhood with a large lot and lots of mature trees. We bought it for about 60% of the usual value because the owner was elderly and didn't care for it. She got enough from the sale to live out her days in a nice retirement home, and I got a 4,400 square foot two-story house with a full basement. We bought it when the girls were very young, so it was the only home they had ever known. For 5 years, we spent every spare dime we had on restoring it, and now it was worth twice what we had put into it. Charlie loved the place, and I knew she would do everything she could to keep it after our divorce. Things cleared up a bit when he asked about the basement. For all the work we had done on the house, we had left the basement alone, with the vague idea of renovating it so the girls could entertain their friends there sometime later. By my calculations, the basement was almost 1,100 square feet. Remodel it, Jack. Make it into a nice apartment, even put in a separate driveway and do separate wiring. That way it will be completely autonomous from the rest of the house and then move in. If you divorce, you'll have your own home and full access to the kids. How can she object? Your lives will be completely separate. You will never have to see her unless you want to. I can't see any sane judge objecting to this plan, especially when children are involved. Man, why didn't I think of that? Because I'm a regular guy. That's why not some autistic people with a collective IQ in the stratosphere. Shanna offered another option. I can kick her ass. I can kick his ass. I can screw up their lives in ways you can't even imagine, and it won't have anything to do with you in any way. Wow, that's some fire in his eyes. I have a feeling that if I take her out, it's going to get really, really ugly. Let's go with Plan C, Shanna. I don't mind her being in a little pain, but she's the mother of my children. We'll do this first, okay? She didn't like it, but agreed, then went to check on the kids. She's got a little crush on you, Jack. Be careful now that you're about to be a bachelor. She's thinking about all sorts of things. I looked at June in surprise. I had always liked Shanna, but I had no idea she had these feelings. Anyway, it was pretty simple. The house was in my name only, which was necessary since I was the only one receiving income at the time of purchase. I consulted with several contractors and architects before I found the plan I liked best. On the advice of a lawyer, I tempered Charlie's fervor a bit by giving her an allowance. Not unlimited, but enough to go out to lunch with her friends and do a little shopping. I also took her Mercedes in for repairs, installing a GPS and anti-theft system. With it, I could remotely shut off the engine from my phone or computer. I noticed that her lunches had become a bit long and drawn out. She would have lunch with friends and then slip away to a friend's house to spend an hour or two in the bedroom with her lover. The next time she drove to lunch, I followed the GPS, and as soon as she headed toward her love nest, I shut the car off. She called me in a panic. Jack, the car is stalled and won't start. I'm stuck. Where are you? She had to tell me where she was across town from our house. What are you doing there? I was going to stop by Beverly's. We went shopping the other day and I left my bag in her car. Isn't Beverly at work? Yes, but she left the bag in the garage. I savored the moment. Try starting the car again, Charlie. I bet it'll start right up. She did, and drove about 5 blocks before she stalled again. When she called back, I told her that the best thing she could do was try to get home. She didn't immediately understand, but drove home, surprised that the car never shut off. When it happened 2 more times, she realized what was wrong. I later recorded her screaming tirade, including her telling Marissa to get the hell out of the room when she tried to calm her down. The look of her in our child's eyes calmed her down, but the damage was done. Things were pretty calm between them after that. When she asked about the basement, I said it was finally time to set it up for the girls. They would soon be at the age where they would need space. She took that as me agreeing with her lifestyle. Charlie spent some of her money to buy a phone I found and put a bug on it. Looks like trouble was brewing in paradise. Apparently, they were planning to leave their spouses and settle into domestic bliss in my house with me paying most of the bills. My behavior had caused some confusion in their plans. Maybe we should call the whole thing off, at least for a while. He's not reacting the way we'd hoped, and I'm afraid he's going to do something drastic. He snorted derisively. He's just a weakling. You're holding him by the hair because of the kids. You know he won't do anything to hurt them. She sighed. Maybe not them, but us for sure. I've seen him at work, and he can be very ruthless when he needs to be. He's made my life very difficult, but he hasn't done anything drastic yet. You're a different matter. You have a very public job. You work for the county. A county official having an affair with the wife of a prominent local businessman is newsworthy. When the paper gets wind of it, you'll be on your ass before the ink is dry, and where would we be then? How would you explain it to your wife? Or have you already told her you're leaving her for another woman? There was a rather long silence, and there was a distinct note in her tone when she spoke. I thought I wasn't. Man, tell her, before my husband does. And just because he hasn't jumped you yet, doesn't mean he won't. He'll just analyze every fact he can get his hands on and hit you where he knows it will hurt the most. You better be ready because it's going to happen. Now, I don't want to see you for at least a month. We both need to think, and I need to repair as much of my relationship with my husband as possible. If we break up, I want him to be in as forgiving a mood as possible and not going to push him too hard. He will be as fair as he can be, especially with the girls. I mean it. A month, and I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Well, well, well. I had just been given the gift of a full month to finalize my plans. I decided to use that time wisely. The first thing I did was set up a meeting with the chairman of the county commission. He and my father had been together for a long time, not as friends, but as business partners. He figured it had something to do with my business and agreed to meet me for dinner. We met at an upscale steakhouse outside of town, and I made sure he ate well and had a few drinks before getting down to business. I'm thinking of moving my business, Fred. Hanover County has been sniffing around. They have a lot of vacant buildings that would suit my needs, and they're offering some very good tax incentives. Fred immediately frowned. The thought of 89 jobs leaving his district was not a pleasant one, especially considering that a few months ago we'd been in the papers about my expansion, which had left me needing another 30 or so employees. That wouldn't look good, especially in an election year. Why? Why would you want to do that? The county has always had a good relationship with you. I don't know what to say, Jack. With the economy the way it is now, I doubt very much we'll be able to make any concessions to you. I don't need any concessions, Fred. The thing is, I need to rezone the property to expand, and I don't think that's going to be easy, especially when it comes time to get permits. Again, why? You know, the rezoning ads have already come out, and no one has raised any objections, so it should just be a rubber stamp procedure when we vote on it. As for the permits, what makes you think you'll have a problem? Because your permit and zoning manager is sleeping with my wife, and he knows that I know. He looked like a punctured balloon. The scandal, when it broke, would be very messy. All county departments would get at least a little fallout. Our local paper had an investigative reporter who was so good that national newspapers were after him. He was like a bloodhound smelling fresh blood. He lowered his gaze to the remains of his steak inside. The food was a little heavy for him. Are you sure? Video and audio, including a scene where he engages in lewd behavior talking to my wife, and you can see he's in his office. Indecent behavior during work hours and on county property, what do you want? Well, his ass on a silver platter would be nice. Other than that, nothing, at least for now. I have plans for remodeling the house that need to be approved without his knowledge, if possible. I'll look into it. There's probably a training seminar the county thinks he should attend. Would 3 days be enough? That would be fine, Fred. I'll wait until after the election, but then I'll burn it. You realize that, don't you? That will give you plenty of time to find an excuse to get rid of him before I start. We parted, knowing that our relationship had changed forever. From now on, he would dread waiting for me to ask to see him. Another relationship ruined because of Charlie. The seminar did take place, and I got the contractor to do all the paperwork in his name. They started the next day. Charlie didn't show much interest. I suspect she had other concerns. To her credit, she tried to rekindle our relationship. She made a long speech about how she was bored, that the kids had outgrown her, and she felt less attractive as a woman. She assured me that she made no excuses for her behavior, that she just happened to encounter a predator at a low point in her life and that it wouldn't happen again. Really? What's going to happen in a few years when the girls grow up and go to college and start building their lives? And you're sitting here staring at four walls and bored out of your mind. You know, instead of ruining our marriage, you could volunteer at some charity organization, join a book club, or get a real job. It would have given you a purpose to put your energy into, but instead you chose a buddy for fun. How's that working out for you? I won't touch you. Our relationship is on life support, and it's only a matter of time until it dies. We won't leave with a bang, more like a whimper. I urge you to think about life after marriage. Well, at least for me, because it will happen. She ran out of the room in tears. Over the next few weeks, she became a model wife and mother. We went out as a family, even taking the kids to Disney for a long weekend. I hated it, but the girls and even Charlie seemed to enjoy it. The only time things got bad was when we went to bed. I rented a room with 2 double beds, making it clear that we wouldn't be sharing. She was already hinting at divorce when I handed her the separation papers. Knowing that a confrontation would not be pretty, I picked the girls up from school a little early and took them to the park. They were no longer infants and realized something was wrong. They also guessed it was about the other person. They just didn't know which parent was at fault. I gently explained that their mother and I weren't getting along well and I was moving out. They burst into tears, hugging me and begging me to stay. I hugged them until they calmed down. I'm not going far away, my little ones. I could never live without you, but I'm moving out of my house and into a new apartment I built in the basement. Technically, I'll still live in the house, but completely self-contained. That's why I put twin beds in the second bedroom. It's not as nice as your rooms are now, but it will always be there for you. Here are your keys. Just please don't put them in your mother's hands. They were a little amused when I promised that on Saturday they could go shopping and decorate the room however they wanted. Since I didn't know what was in store for them, I sent the girls down to the basement when we got home, telling them to check their room and see what she needed. When Charlie met me at the door, screaming at the top of her lungs, I knew I had made the right decision. She became so loud that the neighbors called the police. From the advice of my lawyer, I never entered the house, even though it was wired for sound and vision. I showed the police officer a copy of the divorce papers when she asked what caused the argument. I quickly stopped her when I saw a flicker of judgment in her eyes. Yes, I prepared them to make sure things were going smoothly. It may or may not turn into a divorce, but my attorney advised me to do it to document the process. And while you can't ask, this is about adultery, hers not mine. If you don't believe me, I can show you videos and pictures. She looked at Charlie, who was turning several interesting shades of red. So what? That doesn't mean that asshole has the right to abandon me and our children. Officer, would you mind? I made her follow me around the house and unlock the gate in the fence I directed. Charlie followed me and demanded to go in too, but the policeman, showing wisdom, asked her to stay outside for a moment. I showed her the apartment. She was impressed until we opened the door to the girls' room and saw them huddled together on the bed, crying quietly. They rushed into my arms, and I spent several minutes soothing them. Shh, Mommy's just having a bad day. I'm sure she's calmed down by now, right, officer? The officer nodded grimly and then smiled at the girls. Your dad is right. She's much calmer already. Your daddy and I will go back and talk to her some more to make sure. She said goodbye to them, and we got to talking as soon as we got outside. You must be feeling pretty bad right now, but you got through it. You did the right thing for your girls. I have no advice for you other than to always put your kids first. If my first husband had been half the man you are, I probably wouldn't still hate him. When we returned, Charlie was much calmer and assured the officer that she no longer had to react to her angry outbursts. The fact that she loved me so much was breaking her heart. I'll tell you the same thing I told him. Put the welfare of your children first. How you behave during this will determine how they look at both of you for the rest of your lives. And ma'am, this is just a divorce. It's a long way from the divorce stage. I can't answer the question of going to court to get it annulled. You need a lawyer for that. Good luck to both of you. She waved at the officer as she pulled away, then turned to me and hissed, "Living room." Now she strode into the house, and I took the opportunity to walk around the house, close the gate behind me, and go inside. I put 2 deadbolts and 3 latches on the top door. He would have to use a battering ram to get inside. It was the same on the newly installed lower door, plus I chose it for soundproofing. She could stand upstairs and scream at the top of her voice, and we would never know it. The girls stayed with me until bedtime. I assured them that Mom was okay now, and as soon as they came out, I called out to her, "Shut up and listen. In a few seconds, the girls will be coming through the front door. How you behave with them now may determine how close you will be in later life. So do the same thing I did. Humble yourself and think about them." I hung up the phone. The girls never called. Apparently the night went smoothly. Charlie did hire a lawyer using up the card I'd left her and got a hearing in the judge's office. She was a woman in her early 40s with tired eyes. Seeing families tearing each other apart and constantly using their children as pawns must take a lot out of a person. "Mr. Sayers, why did you file for divorce?" "Because, Your Honor, my wife is currently involved with another man by her own admission for at least 9 months now. When I found out about it, she said she had no intention of ending the affair, and I would just have to live with it. Perhaps I could do that if it were just the two of us. But we have 2 girls, ages 11 and 13, and I wasn't sure I wanted to introduce them to this lifestyle at such a tender age. If my wife disputes any of this, I can provide you with video and audio evidence, Your Honor, all of it legally obtained." She looked at Charlie, who hung his head. Turning to me, she seemed to smile slightly. "I heard you moved out of the house, Mr. Sayers. How far would you estimate you are from your daughters?" 26 paces, ma'am. I remodeled our basement, turning it into an apartment. It's completely separate from the rest of the house. I have no reason to enter the house by invitation only, and my wife has the same restrictions." By invitation only, she turned to Charlie. "Well, it looks like you're going to have to make some decisions, Mrs. Sayers. If you really want to save your marriage, you should reflect on your recent decisions. If this were a divorce, I would advise you to see a counselor. However, this is just a trial separation, and you can get back together at the end of it. So I don't see the point or find any legal reason to overturn it, so I wouldn't schedule it. The separation papers were duly filed, so they remain valid. After 90 days, he can extend it, revoke it, or file for divorce. I wish you both the best of luck." We were let out of the office and into the parking lot. "You're really mad, aren't you?" What a stupid question. Yes, but not to that extent. The thing I feel the most is sadness. I always thought the only way for us to be apart was for one of us to hold the other's hand as we walked by. Now I know that will never happen. My anger wants me to tell you that I wasted my years with you. But we have girls, so it will never be a waste of time. I was in the car before she could respond. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw her sitting in the car sobbing. In past times, I would have hugged her and told her that no matter what happened, we would always be there for each other. Now I just sighed and turned right around. For the next 3 weeks, we coexisted, her upstairs, me downstairs. Charlie got upset when the girls refused to let her into my apartment, tried to pressure them, but they held firm. Finally, one day I knocked on her door. She seemed surprised to see me. I hadn't seen or spoken to her since the trial. Before she could speak, I gave her instructions. Follow my lead. The girls learned how to cook on the gas grill and made us dinner. So follow me and don't ruin their dinner. She obediently followed me. The girls, wearing big aprons and chef's caps they had gotten somewhere, hugged her and led her to our picnic table where we fed them herb-roasted chicken, grilled vegetables, corn on the cob, and tomato salad. They even had a dessert, a cheesecake they made from a mix. Charlie, to her credit, didn't say anything bad, complimented the girls on their cooking skills, and helped her put the dishes away. Echo showed her around the apartment, including their room. Marissa had made a habit of sleeping downstairs most of the time. Echo only stayed upstairs on weekends. I knew the apartment was much smaller than what they were used to, so as a compromise I limited their access to the man cave. They hooked up a game system to a monster TV, and on Fridays and Saturdays they had friends over for the night, camping out on air mattresses. Mostly they were girls, but sometimes boys would come over for the evening and a mom or two would stay with them until the boys left. Sometimes it was Charlie. Most of the time it was pizza, but every once in a while the girls would grill under my supervision, mostly hamburgers and hot dogs. But if there wasn't much, chicken or pork. Summer was approaching. School was almost out, so I splurged and bought a huge in-ground pool that made them more popular than ever. Most parents knew about our life but never commented. Some moms hinted, and one outright said she wouldn't mind getting involved. I thanked them as graciously as possible and promised to keep them in mind if I was ever without a date. It pissed Charlie off, especially when they did it in her presence. One night after the parents and kids had left, she told me off hard. "What were you thinking? That slut climbed into your lap while you were eating? Do you know how ashamed I was?" Not really. Do you think it's as embarrassing as finding out your spouse is having fun with someone else, and all her friends know and even provide alibis and places to further destroy the marriage? If so, I can emphasize. Also, we may have been a little close, but it was pretty crowded at the picnic table, and her daughter and both of mine were right next to us. Charlie looks shocked. For all her carefully thought-out plans, she hadn't expected to have to deal with a situation like this. Of course, it was all nonsense. I wasn't going to do anything that would serve as a weapon for her in the divorce when it came through, but it still felt good to pull her chain. I tried to avoid any contact with Charlie, though I still monitored her phone calls and videotaped her daily life. Apparently, the fact that she had 2 lovers anytime she wanted and none for 3 months kept her busy. After a while, it was funny, but in many ways it was also sad. After her release, she often cried in her sleep. She still had her cell phone and didn't know that I had put it on a wire tap and removed the restrictions from her regular phone. I remember the shock on her face when the telemarketer called her, and she hurriedly called everyone she could remember to make sure the phone was completely serviceable. She took it as a sign that I was thawing out and things were getting better, not as a death blow to our marriage. If she thought about it, the fact that I no longer cared whether or not she was communicating with her lover would make her think twice. The election was over. The county manager resigned, and the new appointee promised the commissioners that he would clean the fat out of all county budgets. Bob was quietly let go. He caved to the manager and addressed the county commissioners. They met him in the conference room and showed him the clip I had given them, where he goes into great detail about what he's going to do to Charlie the next time they get together. "That's it, Bob. The owner of that video has threatened to make it public and sue the district for allowing the manager to have an affair and use the district's computers and phones for games." Unusual games? All we have to do to make this stop is fire you without a recommendation. If we don't, we'll all be embarrassed. Probably have to pay that person a lot of money to keep the matter quiet, and we'll make sure you get as many charges as our attorney thinks we can bring. Your chances of ever working in another county or municipality will be reduced to 0, and jobs in the private sector in any management capacity will be very, very hard to find. Do us all a favor, Bob. Consider the lesson learned and walk away. He had no choice, and the local paper didn't even write about his departure. Basically, he just disappeared. Charlie called me, wavering between anger and remorse. "Did you have to do that? He has little kids. How is he going to support them? Shouldn't he have thought about all this before he decided sleeping with you was a good idea? And I feel sorry for his kids, but his wife has a pretty good job right now, and she should be okay with child support. His wife is a stay-at-home mom. Not anymore. I think she has an accounting degree, and a local company hired her pretty quickly. I hear it's a pretty good job. Who would hire a man who hasn't worked in 6 years and give him such a good job?" "Me," said I before hanging up. Bob's wife was a chubby, pretty woman with a perpetual smile on her face. It took me shattering her world to finally knock the hubris off of it. What am I going to do now? This was the only income we had. How am I going to take care of my kids? Her oldest was in school, and the 3-year-old was busy trying to climb on top of me while I tickled her. "You're going to go to work for me, rumor has it. I'm not a bad boss. Even if you don't want to, I'll help you. It's not my fault he betrayed your marriage and put you in this position. But guilty or not, I feel responsible. This offer doesn't commit you to anything. My kids are older and already know, but it still affects them deeply. I'm doing my best to minimize the pain, but I can't take it away. That's in case you want to leave, of course. If you want to support him, I will pray for you. But I have to tell you that it all seems too smooth and practical for this to be his first time. I thank you for your patience, and I apologize for the information I had to give you. If you decide to get a divorce, I can help you with the proof." I left her trying to hold back sobs as she hugged her daughter. She called me 3 days later. In a tight, controlled voice, she told me that he wasn't going to tell her he'd been fired or that it was all about cheating until she threw it in his face. I thought he was going to hit me, so I smirked and told him, "Go ahead. The bruises will make it easy for him to go to jail and for me to get a restraining order." I told him it would be a fitting end to a horrible situation. He ran out and I haven't seen him since. But he doesn't have the money because I cleared all the accounts the same day you told me what was going on. And it wasn't done out of spite. Well, not much anyway. He has 2 young children and they have needs. I wasn't going to let them lack anything because of his mistakes. I have enough money to live on for 3 months. Is that job offer still on the table? She started work the following week. I was thrilled to see how nimble she was, and we agreed that she would be in the office half the time and work from home the rest of the time. This helped her tremendously when it came to childcare issues. My staff were not idiots, and when Charlie's picture disappeared from my desk and the girls and I appeared in its place, they understood and even expressed cautious condolences. All but one, Misty, despised Charlie because she thought Misty was trying to hit on me and made a huge scene at the company party. Misty left in tears, and I kicked Charlie's ass the next morning when she sobered up. Looking back, I realized it was right after she started having an affair with Bob. Transmission, I guess? If she was spinning it, I was spinning it. I threatened to cut Charlie off from work for a month financially before she came to the office and apologized to Misty. Misty accepted, and they hugged to show there were no hard feelings. I was able to see most of their faces, and the pat on the back looked like they were looking for a soft spot for a knife. She walked into my office, smirking. "I just found out you can fire me if you want, boss, but I'm glad. You're too good a man for that bitch. You didn't notice it, but she was always so damn cruel to women when you weren't around. We're gonna split the cards on who goes after you first. I never told you, but I worked as a dealer at a casino on the coast when I was a student, and if I get my hands on the cards, those sluts don't stand a chance. I like romantic movies, French food, and long, slow massages with warm, aromatic oils." Misty was a trim redhead, confident, and knew how to dress to get noticed without violating office standards. She was 12 years younger than me, in a serious relationship with a nice guy who I assumed she would marry sooner or later. I had already promised to walk her down the aisle and pay for the honeymoon within reason, so I knew she had no serious intentions. I shocked her by responding with joke after jokes since we were alone. "I guess I'll go along with that. I've always wondered if your rug matches your curtains." Her hand flashed to her mouth and she giggled, running to the door. Turning around, she looked me straight in the eye. It would have fit, but I took the carpet off, deciding I liked smooth floors better. "If you don't believe me, ask Jerry." I promised her that would be our first topic of conversation the next time we were together, and listened as she laughed all the way down the hall. It made me grin the rest of the day, and I wasn't as serious as I used to be. The other ladies noticed this, and Misty must have blabbed because every time I got moody or angry, one or the other would say something to lift my spirits. I realized the situation was out of control when our 60-year-old secretary told me she was from a different generation and how I felt about shaggy wool rugs. Charlie was despairing, climbing the walls, alone. No lover, no husband, no outlet except for lunches with her friends. And after I nearly ruined her best friend's marriage by telling her husband that his wife had let Charlie use their house to continue the affair, neither of them would even talk about her situation, and damn sure wouldn't pander. The husband let it slip, and the remaining friends were on thin ice when it came to Charlie. A month later, I opened the door and saw Charlie on her knees, begging me to just talk to her. I mulled over about 20 very cruel responses before opening the door wide and walking into the living room. She followed me in a few seconds, looking around wearily as if fearing an ambush. "Beer?" She nodded, and I took the glass and poured her one. She tasted it and examined the glass closely. "What's this?" "It's real Buck imported. If you don't like it, I have a few other varieties you might be interested in. Have you turned violent?" I glanced at my watch. There were 3.5 minutes left before she'd managed to piss me off. No, I didn't turn into a lush. I've decided to choose quality over quantity. That and sipping beer rather than consuming it. It usually takes me about 2 weeks to go through a 12-pack. I'm afraid to say it has taken its toll on the girls. If you were to look in my refrigerator, you would see that sodas, root beers, and exotic fruits are the most popular. What about you? Have you started drinking more wine? I knew from the cameras that she drank almost a bottle of night, much more than when we lived together. She blushed, surprising me with her candor. Yes, it helps me get through the lonely nights. But I realized that and started drinking less. Why would you be lonely? A boy in love is officially semi-lonely. Why not go out and play? Scratch an itch, so to speak. She looks shocked. Doesn't it bother you? No more than when you did it when we were still living together. At least you're legally separated and he's in the process of getting a divorce, so the embarrassment will be much less. She lowered her eyes in what I hoped was shame. We haven't been together for a long time. I knew Bob had been gone a long time, taking a job in a small county half a state away. His salary was about 2/3 of what he made here, and child support was calculated from his former salary. Paying it every week was very hard. If she wanted to play, one of them would have to drive at least 3 hours. Besides, she said, I know you know a lot more now than you're admitting, so I'm sure you realize he's off the hook. Honestly, just thinking about being with him again makes my stomach churn. If I had the chance to do it all over again, I wouldn't give him the time of day. He wasn't even close to worth what he cost me. He didn't cost you anything, Charlie. You're the one who gained so much money when you threw him in my face and threatened to take everything away from me if I didn't agree to let you continue. She wheezed, the little sobs threatening to turn into big ones. For some reason, this made me angry. Stop it, Charlie. All the tears in the world won't fix the situation. You must have come here for a reason. What do you want? She looked up, a surprisingly determined expression on her face. I want one thing. You. I want you to come back. I want you to snuggle up to me, stroke my ear like you used to, and tell me everything's going to be okay. I want you and the girls to be with me, wrapped up in blankets on this big couch, eating popcorn and laughing about the movie we're watching until they fall asleep, each snuggled up against one of us. I want to feel loved again, not empty and hollow, just marking the days. I know my promises mean nothing to you right now, but I beg you to give me a chance, a fresh start, to make amends. That little speech must have knocked her out pretty hard. She sighed, standing up. Think about it for a while. I don't expect an answer right now. Before I go, will you give me a hug just for a second? Charlie looked lost and miserable, so I hugged her and let her cry on my shoulder for a few minutes. Finally, she pulled away, thanked me, and left. I sat on the couch for another long time until Marissa came in and asked where dinner was. I pointed to the menu posted on the corkboard near the refrigerator. Pick one. She must have called Darcy because she came downstairs and had a long discussion about Chinese food, fried chicken, pizza, or hamburgers before settling on a Creole dish. You can call your mom and see if she wants to join us. If you want to, of course. Darcy ran upstairs and returned 10 minutes later, Charlie trailing behind her. They argued until I reminded them that if they didn't call soon, it would be too late. They decided to take it and left, returning with a movie they had rented, and asked if we could watch it at the man cave after dinner. I ate my black and blue salad, enjoying the combination of blackened steak and blue cheese crumbles, watching them chatter and taste test all the plates, including mine. Darcy worked up the courage to order the alligator bites, and they turned out pretty good. Once we were full, we went into the building and sat down on the leather couch, seating both kids between us like old times. They chose a novel, and I laughed at it until Darcy poked me in the ribs, telling me to shut up so they could enjoy it. Neither girl saw the ending until the next day, because they both fell asleep snuggled up against us. When I looked over, I saw Charlie crying softly, trying not to wake Marissa. We kissed them, and I sent them home to their mother's house, saying I wanted to stay there for a while. Everyone, even Charlie, kissed me goodnight as they left. I still sat there for a long time thinking, would I ever be able to trust her again? What would I do if I did, and she turned out to be a bitch again? Would my heart be able to take another blow like that? It didn't take long for sleep to set in, and the next morning they found me still lying on the couch in the men's room. I went to take a shower while they finished the movie. I have to admit Charlie was really trying. She cooked my favorite meals, didn't complain when I didn't always accept her invitations. The relationship with the girls grew stronger and stronger, especially when school started again, and she took them shopping with her. I always gave Marissa one of my cards, and Charlie wore it out, as was her habit, even buying herself a couple outfits. I didn't complain because it wasn't at all what she'd spent before. She still had her allowance in one card left, and she was learning to live on the budget I had allotted her. She surprised us all when she came to me asking for a favor. I've been thinking a lot about my life, Jack. I think I'll take your advice and either get a job or find something worthwhile to volunteer for. If I do that, will you watch the girls if I need you? I gave her a big hug and praised her. She had also been going to the gym, and it was already showing. She was getting back into her old soccer mom shape. I always praised her for her progress, even giving her extra money for workout gear and a few new outfits. Charlie took a volunteer job with a major charity organization, helping to prepare events from fun runs to formal balls and dinners. For the first 2 or 3 months, it was mostly daytime events, usually on weekends. Most of the time, one girl or the other went with her, sometimes both. Sometimes I went with her as well, which she seemed to enjoy. As the weather got cooler, they moved to more enclosed areas where the activities were held mostly at night. I went to some of them with her. It was fun, and I got to socialize with her a bit. But it was taking too much of my energy to do it regularly and still run the company, so I cut my visits down to 1 out of 3. Charlie acted frustrated until I asked her how she would like it if I got up early and dragged her to work, and she still had to go to her job with hardly any sleep. On the second day, she usually had breakfast with us, showing pictures of all the beautiful people on her phone. I didn't think much of it, preferring to trust her as I figured she had learned her lesson. The video cameras were still in place, but I had stopped checking them weeks ago. We were slowly coming back to each other. I had almost come to terms with her act, believing she was truly sorry, and knew what would happen if she stumbled again. But pride doesn't precede a fall. Smugness does. One day, June called me and asked me to bring the kids over for the weekend, myself included if I wanted to. Charlie had a 2-day event, so we kissed her, wished her luck on her project, and even invited her to come to their mansion and spend the night. She declined, saying she'd be too tired to drive the extra 35 miles, told us to have a good time, kissed us goodbye, and waved until we were out of sight. Harry and June met us at the door. "You're just an idiot when it comes to women, Jack. You know that, right? Shanna is furious because she sent you all kinds of signals when the trouble with Charlie started, and you never responded. I know that with your old-fashioned sense of honor, you wouldn't even touch another woman until you were divorced. But she doesn't understand why you didn't just let Charlie go. If I did, I'd be just as bad as Charlie. Besides, I did everything with the children in mind and couldn't afford a hint of scandal if I had full custody." "How are you getting along with Charlie?" "Much better. She doesn't stay at home now. She plays sports, is much more conservative about money, even volunteers for a major charity organization. I still haven't moved in with her, but we stay overnight sometimes. I have high hopes for the future." Harry sighed, and June didn't make eye contact with me. "We need to talk, Jack, after the girls are tucked in for the night." That ruined my mood for the rest of the evening. The girls didn't notice that I was quiet and after dinner rushed off to watch a movie in their 32-person media room. We went into the bar, a room furnished like a Western-style saloon. He brought us each a couple of beers and June a glass of wine, which she favored. I tasted it, expecting something exceptional for $600 a bottle, but in my opinion it tasted the same as the $20 stuff. We sat sipping it. I knew it was best not to rush them. They would get to what they wanted to say in their own time. Finally, June began. "You do know that we contribute heavily to several charitable organizations, right? Especially since most of it we can write off. We'd rather give money to an organization that can really improve the world than let the government waste it. And Charlie has approached us several times about her new position, and we've always sent a nice check." I suddenly realized I wasn't going to like where this was going. We sometimes go to events for these charities, something like the Show the Flag event. Their reasoning is that if we support them publicly, it might affect others. About a month ago, we attended a black-tie dinner for 1,000 of plate, with all proceeds going to charity. Charlie was there backstage coordinating everything. She was busy, and we didn't get a chance to talk. I don't think she even realized we were there. The evening was almost over. The tables had been cleared away, and the band had set up those who wanted to dance. We were just about to leave when I saw her again. Look, she showed me a picture of Charlie in a dress I'd never seen before, and there was a guy next to her. "David Duncan," June said, answering an unasked question. "He's pretty well off. He goes to these events hoping to make a fortune, and he likes to seduce married women. He's very good, Jack. He even tried his tricks on me once or twice, but then he gave up. I took advantage of the facilities, went back to Harry, showed him the picture, and we sort of blended into the scenery, which isn't that hard in a crowd of 500 people. The men all dressed in tuxedos, the women in dresses. We got a few more pictures, all in inappropriate poses, some worse than others. That's why we wanted you here. This is not our life, but you are one of our oldest friends, so we decided to tell you. What you do with this information is up to you. We just didn't want you to make the same mistake again. Most couples would never have spoken up, following some obscure belief that the bearers of bad news shouldn't get involved, and then, when things went to hell, would have pounced on you with sympathy and support. However, these people were true friends, and the slight change in their way of thinking made them speak up now to give me information and time to think about the choice. If there was a way to reconfigure the rest of the world to their way of thinking, it would probably get a lot better. I nodded, sinking into thought. The first betrayal had hurt me badly, but this, after everything we'd been through and all the promises she'd made, had hurt me deeply. Without a doubt, our marriage was over. The emotions hadn't had time to subside yet, so I thanked Harry and June, bowed out, and went to bed. I figured I'd be up half the night, but when my head touched the pillow, I passed out like a light. My eyes opened at 6, and I lay pondering what I should do. The divorce was back on, no doubt about it. I would call the lawyer on Monday and get into action. I didn't know when I'd tell Charlie or the girls about it, but I wasn't going to waste much time. It was time to move on. I'll go my way. She'll go hers. I'll live in the basement until Marissa graduates, and maybe Darcy will come with me when I move out. If Charlie had any common sense, and judging by her actions, there was very little she would have agreed for the girls' sake, if not more. But then again, she wasn't known for being malleable. Time would tell. We spent the next 2 days watching the girls have fun, although we participated in the activities as well. June decided she wanted horses, so they built a barn with 6 stalls and filled it to capacity. I was a little apprehensive about such huge animals, but the ones they acquired were known for their intelligence and gentle disposition. Harry discovered he was allergic to horses, so June, Shanna, the girls, and I got in the saddle and spent a pleasant morning walking around the neighborhood. June had booked a picnic in the gazebo by their favorite pond, a body of water that might as well have been a small lake. Harry met us there with fishing rods, and I bowed out, fishing for a few hours before heading back. The pond was well stocked, and we both believed in the catch-and-release principle. So we enjoyed the fight the base gave us, and then, as gently as possible, removed the hook and sent them back to grow up for the next bout. While we were fishing, we talked business. I owed my company to Harry. He and June had insisted I started, all because of something I had done for June out of the goodness of my heart. June suffered from dry skin, not horribly, but enough to be uncomfortable at times. One random comment got me thinking. I was a civil engineer and specialized in water systems for multi-story buildings, office, industrial, residential, or mixed use. After pondering her problem, I went to Mankawi when it was still just a workshop and built what we called the wall. It was one wall of a shower stall with protruding nozzles spaced 4 inches from knee to neck. They pulsed and vibrated, delivering first soap and water, then rinse water, and finally body lotion. This allowed for simultaneous washing, massaging, and lotion application, a versatile means of keeping clean. A side effect was that when a woman was washing her hair, leaning over the vibrating heads hitting strategic spots, it was a very pleasant sensation. The water pressure and temperature, the intensity of the vibration, and the warmth of the lotion were controlled from a small touch-screen computer on the shower door, with 6 programmable settings for each member of the family. We didn't mention it in advertising, but there were a couple articles in women's magazines touting the feeling of cleanliness it provided. Harry let me install a prototype for June, and she liked it so much that she showed it to her friends, after which women started coming over to shower with it. Eventually, Harry wanted his bathroom back and told them to buy their own. June called me with 7 orders that needed to be delivered as soon as possible. I shocked her by telling her that I didn't have the time or inclination to do more, that it was just a nice gesture for my friends. This led to a long conversation about how much the build had cost me and was it secure? Harry immediately lent me his attorney to get the patents and drew up the articles of incorporation for the LLC company. We rented a small industrial building, and I hired 2 guys to help build the ones for June's friends. We installed each wall in the custom bathrooms and got rave reviews. All of their friends were rich, which was good because they weren't cheap. It wasn't a case of keeping up with the Joneses, but rather keeping up with the Gateses and the buffets. Harry and June loaned me $500,000 to get me started, and things took off from there. For the first 2 years, we worked only on word of mouth and writing in magazines. We ended up installing them from many actors, sports figures, singers, and writers, even 2 former first ladies. 5-star hotels started installing them in luxury suites. One former NFL quarterback was so impressed that he asked me to build a portable unit and put it in his former team's locker room. It stood there for 2 months until the coach removed it to stop fights over who was next. My company built a very large unit that could fit 5 people at once and installed it in every locker room of all the soccer teams in most colleges. Then hockey players, basketball teams, just about every major sport that required muscle. Harry was shrewd enough to make sure the lawyer got international patents, and we sued companies in France and Portugal, eventually getting their assets. And Harry wanted to go global after the divorce, so they figured out how to shield the company from Charlie's influence. That was fine with me. I wasn't angry enough to ruin her life, but angry enough not to reward her. In fact, after talking to the lawyers, I sold the company to Harry, making a nice profit after deducting the debt. I was still working there as a manager for a very good salary. Everything was very transparent, and in the divorce, I intended to offer her 60% of our assets in exchange for any other claims, such as alimony and child support. I had already calculated how much it would cost with my new salary, and each week I deposited that amount into an escrow account for final division to be used if the kids needed anything. I gave her a house, $800,000, after the girls turned 18 so they would have a roof over their heads, and agreed to pay all the utility bills until then, unless she remarried. My lawyer told me I was being too kind, but when I told him I was thinking of the girls, not Charlie, he shut up. In the end, the deal left her with the house and $2.6 million. It would have been hard for her to refuse. She did say no. I watched on security cameras as she was served, as she sat down at the dining room table to open envelopes. The first contained a divorce petition, the second a picture of her and her new lover. I left her a little note. I was ready to forgive you, Charlie, thinking you had learned your lesson and would never stumble again. I guess I was wrong, huh? I'm offering you a very lucrative deal, Charlie, and you'll come out of it smelling like a rose. Just sign the papers and we'll both move on with our lives. No need to fight for custody. We'll share it jointly until they reach adulthood. For that, I will continue to live in the apartment until Marissa turns 18. Then Darcy can live wherever she wants. She will be 16 and she can make her own decisions. Read the papers, take them to the attorney of your choice, have them look into everything. Please don't be stupid about it. At the end of the day, Charlie, it will do you no good and cost you money you may want to keep. Good luck with any future relationships. Just don't use me as a reference. Yes, I sent the same pictures my lawyer had, the ones I gave you to his wife. Be careful. This is an attachment alienation state, and a good attorney can easily take most of your new divorce settlement in a good amount. Let's hope she's not that harsh. I didn't feel the need to sign it. Charlie begged. Charlie pleaded, but Charlie was getting nowhere. Please, Charlie, don't read chapter and verse excuses from the cheater's handbook. You wanted another, and you got it. I refuse to be your backup plan. It's over. Let's not make things harder on the girls. Sign the papers, and in a few more years when the kids are older, I'll be gone, and we'll only have to see each other at weddings and baptisms of children. She cried. Then she got angry. Her lawyer was pretty slick, and when she saw what I was offering, she advised me to take the money and live happily ever after, explaining that Charlie had come to her because she was one of the best, and the best didn't come cheap. I may end up getting more than you and think, is it worth it? Don't lower the quality of your life for the sake of losing, Charlie. You cheated twice, and he has documentation for both incidents. This isn't a no-fault state. He can charge you with adultery if you insist, and you'll end up with a lot less, and I'll still have to pay. Agree. She countersued for mental cruelty and claimed I had my own affairs with Shanna and Brenda, Bob's ex-wife. Brenda threatened to sue her for slander and defamation of character. Shanna showed up at her door and told her there would be trouble if she didn't stop. It won't really be me, bitch. I have a lot of friends left from my old unit, and believe me when I tell you this, we're a bunch of mean bitches. I won't even talk about what the guys can do to you. I see a lot of mugging in your future. You could disappear. I hear they pay a lot of money for pretty white bitches in third world countries, and one of my guys has connections. He'd be happy to take care of you. Think with your head, not your ass, woman, while you still have a choice. By this time, Charlie had her back against the wall, pressing a hand to her throat. One more thing. When this is over, I'm going after him. He's a good man who would never have held up in my old world, and that's what attracts me. A nice, gentle, strong man is just what I'm looking for. I'm still young enough to breed, and I bet we'll make adorable little chocolate babies. Just be warned, bitch. She walked away, leaving Charlie gasping, looking at the spreading stain on his jeans. I didn't hear the story until much later. She stopped her actions the next day. A few weeks later, I was surprised when a woman I didn't know showed up at work and asked for a few minutes of my time, saying it had to do with my divorce. After turning on the video and audio recording, I invited her into my office. Sometimes I used it during negotiations. I have found that suppliers and clients sometimes forget some things when it comes to contracts. She was a very attractive woman, perhaps 10 years older, but looking her age. I stood up and shook her hand, walking over to the couch next to the conference table. I wanted to put her at ease. I'm sorry to come unannounced, Mr. Sayers. I'm Barbara Duncan. I believe your wife knows my husband. It was clear. It was her husband who was having fun with Charlie. I took her hand. I find myself in the awkward position of having to apologize for my wife's actions, Mrs. Duncan. She shook her head. I'm sure it's not your fault, and I know it's not mine. They were two grown men, both as I found out, with a history of adultery. They probably seduced each other. I'm here to ask a favor. It seems you have photos and testimony that I could use in my divorce. Would you mind sharing them? Give me the name of your attorney, and I'll send them over. She sighed. I don't have one yet. When things went south, he emptied all the bills, leaving me with just enough for a house and clothes for our son. I wasn't working, and my future looked bleak. Once again, I found myself in the unusual position of having to clean up the mess my wife had made. I dialed the number, asking her to hold on. John, I've got another customer for you. The asshole's wife. Give me a time and I'll send her over. And John, I'm paying. Why don't you give me a discount? What? That's what I thought, you greedy bastard. Here's her number. Text her when you're free. Barbara looked shocked, and I grinned. Don't worry. He's really good at what he does, and I can afford that kind of expense. It's the least I can do. You don't know me, but if there's anything else I can help you with, ask. She sat up, her lips trembling. Please don't cry. Please don't cry, she began. I gave her some tissues, let her cry for a while, and thought about it. Brenda was at her place now, and if anyone knew what she was going through, it was her. I called, and she came into the office. Brenda, Barbara, you two have something in common. My wife has slept with both of your husbands. I'll be out for a minute. I gave them 15 minutes. When I walked back in, both women plopped me down on the couch, and then they both kissed me. I didn't expect that to happen. I sat there glowing, a different shade of lipstick on each cheek. I was telling Barbara what a nice guy you are, and that when the divorce is final, I'm coming for you. Don't look so shocked. You know you're my hero. Now focus. Barb needs a job until her divorce is finalized. Sounds like she's perfect for that new position you were talking about. She has a degree in international business relations, speaks French, Italian, and German. Looks like I found your new international marketing director. You can thank me with a big bonus in my next check. And remember, I'm your chief accountant, so I know how much you can pay her. Don't make me adjust it. Charlie literally flew into a rage. What the hell is wrong with you? Is this some kind of revenge? Treating me like shit while you give these bitches all the support you can? Dude, you're talking about pissing me off. I've reached my absolute limit in dealing with her. Charlie, you need to shut up. You need to shut up right now. Are you listening? Because if you don't, the offer will be withdrawn and I'll make you fight for every bone in your body. You think I imagined when I married you that I'd spend my time supporting the women whose lives you ruined? No, you didn't. This is on you, Charlie, and I'm done. Don't talk to me again, and if you do, you can talk to my lawyer. Don't worry about the girls. They'll tell me if they need anything. Are you listening to what I'm saying? She began to cry again, but honey, I'm sure I spoke directly above her. I'll tell you what you can be sure of. You can be sure that the divorce will go through. You can be sure that before the ink on the paper dries, I'll already be looking for someone else. Girls need a positive role model, so go screw up another marriage or 2 or 3. When you're done ruining the life they thought they had, send the women to me, and I'll do my best to put them back together. Maybe they can form a club or something. I'm sure they'll let me be an honorary member. Lord knows I have experience. Goodbye, Charlie, and I mean that literally. I guess my rage startled her because she backed into a corner, eyes wide, and didn't make a sound. I didn't even close the door when I left. The girls hated it. I tried to shield them, but somehow they found out. They didn't see their mother for 3 weeks until I talked them into a weekend away. She's still your mother. She hasn't betrayed you, and she still loves you. I'm sure not seeing you is killing her. I know it's going to be hard, and if you don't want to stay after a while, come back. Do it for the family. Darcy, her 11-year-old eyes looking ancient, sighed. We'll go. But you're wrong, Papa. She betrayed us just as she betrayed you and robbed us of a normal family. She'll never be the same. We did things with you, with her, but we'll never do them together. Never share common memories again. Love you, Daddy. She hugged me tightly and walked the longest 26 steps of her young life. Damn it. When did kids get so smart and so world-weary? I may have to see a therapist for them and for all of us. It took 11 months and cost her about $600,000 before she gave up. She asked me to give her an hour to socialize before signing the papers, so I called her. What can you say that will make a difference? If you're sorry, I accept your apology. Otherwise, sign the papers. I'm not going to go through another drama. Darcy was now 12 and a half and had grown into a rare beauty. Marissa, now almost 15, looked like a 20-year-old model. People still came to pool and man cave parties, and when the boys showed up, the mothers circled their nest like hawks. The chicks wouldn't go to waste with them. Charlie never offered to come. I was still paying all the bills for the house, and that would be it until Junior left for college. I changed the petition a little. The house, instead of going to Charlie as per the first divorce proposal, would be sold and the proceeds divided equally. Charlie will still get enough to live comfortably if he is careful with the money. Before the ink was even dry on my divorce papers, Brenda, true to her word, came after me. I stopped her as gently as I could. I'd love to, Brenda, but you work for me, and if we don't work out, it could be very, very awkward. I'll quit. You'll receive my resignation letter via email in about 5 seconds. I had to laugh. You love your job, and while you're really good, no one will pay you as much as I do. I could marry a bank. You could, but it would take a long time if it happens at all. Please stop. I knew she was flying to France the next morning. Get a hold of yourself, Barb. Maybe you'll find a Frenchman and fall in love. Either way, there's a Pierre-Jean Claude out there pining for you and looking for you. Brenda has found the guy, another accountant, and they're still tallying up the numbers. How many minutes he can last, how many orgasms he could give her in one session. So far, it's all adding up. Barbara took my proposal literally, found a Frenchman and moved to Nice to head up the company's European division, C'est la vie. I muddled through for about 9 months. I dated a few women I had met through friends and various social events, found out that my equipment was still working, but other than physical pleasure, nothing much was happening. Harry and Jane looked after me as best they could. I came over to the girls' house a few times and we had a good time. Shanna left them saying that although she loved them and Star, it was time to move on. I was a little disappointed, and they smirked. 13 months after the divorce, Charlie got engaged to a guy she met through her volunteer work. The charity she worked for after her affair and divorce came to light, asked her if she thought she could be more useful elsewhere, and she took the hint and left. I met him at the mailbox several times, and he seemed like a perfectly decent man. The best part was that he was single when they met, so she didn't ruin the marriage. I wondered how truthful she was about her past, but that was none of my business. The girls liked him. He had a sense of humor, and he didn't try to be a father figure. Sometimes he took them to the movies or to a restaurant while their mother worked. Strangely, I didn't feel threatened and was glad they were adjusting. One day they came home sad, and over the course of the evening it all came to light. Josh was out of their lives. He had broken off the engagement. I asked if they knew why. Really, Dad? It's Mom. What do you think happened? I'd gotten used to it enough that I didn't shake with disgust when confronted by Charlie could talk to her politely, but didn't encourage her. I'd long ago removed all the surveillance equipment because it was no longer my business, but admittedly I was tempted to turn it back on when Josh showed up. Was she still making the same faces and noises she'd made during our intimacy? Had she started trying harder with him? Thankfully, I didn't give in to temptation. 17 months after the divorce, I came home and saw an old friend sitting on my couch. Shanna was in town and had stopped by to see the girls. Marissa was 16. I bought her a milestone car and she was telling her about it. I didn't expect her to choose a four-wheel drive Jeep, but it was much safer than most of the cars the teenage girls wanted, so I agreed. She and Darcy were very popular at school, and they always had friends underfoot, and this way their opponents could travel together. I thought later that her choice had a lot to do with Shanna when she was younger. The latter drove a car very similar to the one she had chosen. Darcy jumped up to me. "Daddy, guess what? Shanna wants to take us camping. Star is going to come with us. Can we go?" It was unexpected. Darcy was just a girl, and I couldn't imagine her sleeping on the ground or getting dirty. Shanna sat back and grinned. I grinned back. "I haven't seen you in almost 2 years, and this is how you came back. Kidnap my kids and leave me abandoned?" Her grin grew even wider. "You can come over. In fact, I'll probably need some help." Darcy has allowed 2 girlfriends, Marissa and Star too. Managing 9 girls between the ages of 10 and the 16th of May be beyond me. I doubt there is anything you can't handle. You organize them like a military camp. I don't think you'll have any trouble. Come with us, Daddy. We'll need someone to carry things and cook meals. You don't expect us to do that, do you? I mean, we'll be on vacation, my oldest daughter, Grinda, she finished. I went off to order pizza while they sat over Darcy's laptop looking at expensive camping gear. I had a feeling it was going to cost me a tidy sum. Shanna stopped by every 2 or 3 days right up until the trip to check on what they had bought, and if they needed to take it with them. She had them dismantle and put up 3 tents until they learned to do it blindfolded. Star was often with her, already showing that she had inherited her parents' brains and her mother's looks. I hadn't spoken to Charlie in months. She'd had a few men over, and she always sent the girls to my place on the nights she had dates. I couldn't escape the thought that she wasn't much of a role model right now, but the girls were pretty cool about it. One day she called and wanted to talk to me about girls. My alarm system went off. This couldn't have been good news. I met her at the front door. She went straight to what was on her mind. "Stop turning my girls against me. I'm sick to death of hearing about Shanna. She can do this. She can do that. She blah, blah, blah." It took me a second to find my voice and a little more to calm down enough to sound reasonable. At first I laughed, and this is coming from a woman who's had a whole parade of lovers in the last few months. You think girls are stupid enough to think you've been playing backgammon all night? Damn, what a hypocrite you are, Charlie. But you know what? I tried to stay out of your business, Charlie, so stay out of mine. You look like shit. The expression "rode hard and got wet" comes to mind. Get your ass back to the gym, get your hair done, take care of yourself, at least for the girls. Anything else on your mind? Well then, have a brilliant day and leave me alone. I walked away from her shocked, and what made it even more cake decorating was that just then Shanna pulled up. There was clapping from the girls who jumped outside when they saw Shanna pull up. It was amusing to watch Miss Super Control blush. "Why did you do that?" I smiled. "Because I've always wanted to, and believe me, it surpassed all my fantasies about you. Honestly, I wanted to do it for the shock of some people. And I'd really like to try it again to make sure that the feeling I had wasn't just a one-time thing." They went out bringing salads, and I put their steaks and baked potatoes on plates. After dinner, they hurried back into the house, leaving me to deal with the mess. I checked and rechecked everything on the list Shanna had given me. How could something that took so long to coordinate be fun? Shanna put Star and her 2 friends in her 4-wheeler. Marissa put her 2 friends in hers and Darcy and her buddies in hers. It was pretty crowded. Me? I was driving one of the support trucks with the back piled high with gear, a support vehicle according to Shanna. It took 4 hours to get there, but it was worth it. We were completely isolated. It took 30 minutes to get to the bathhouse. If they had to go sooner, they would have to imitate a bear. Shanna took command, handing out orders, and 4 tents grew out of the ground. I was instructed to put the food into bear-proof containers, which did not make me feel warm and fuzzy. The coolers would be locked in the cars overnight, and Shanna had bear repellent that she sprayed in large doses around the tent and cars. Next, I was to assemble the charcoal grill we had brought with us. By lunchtime, everything was ready to go. Lunch consisted of cold appetizers and sodas. The girl giggled and looked out over the lake. While they put on their bathing suits, I drove back to the marina, got the keys to the biggest pontoon boat they had, and went through an hour-long briefing. It was huge and designed for 18 adults, so I figured 9 girls and 2 adults wouldn't tax it. The next morning, we had to make breakfast. I was pretty good with the grill, but Shanna took over breakfast, delegating everything to the older girls. Soon the air was filled with the sounds of sausages roasting, and I was chopping peppers, onions, and ham for an omelet. Shanna brought out the biggest cast-iron skillet I'd ever seen, heated the oil, and made the best pancakes I'd ever tasted with buckwheat flour and fresh blueberries. We got full, and then Shanna got everyone to help clean up, washing dishes, picking up trash, putting away utensils and food until it looked like we'd never been here. Shanna got a couple fishing rods and went down to the lake with each grill and then taught each one how to fish. There were lots of small bream in the cove, so everyone caught something different. We took endless pictures, and the girls never failed to let me know that we would be visiting places like Academy or Dick's very soon. We laced around until almost lunchtime and then drove back to the marina. Shanna made them wear sneakers and cover up their swimsuits with shorts and t-shirts. They figured it was because we took them to a restaurant on the marina for lunch. Oddly enough, they served Italian food there, and plates of spaghetti, ravioli, huge meatballs, and other assorted dishes were shared. Little girls have a knack for getting their hands full. We took them for a walk down to the piers to admire the boats. There was much squealing when they realized the big boat was meant for them, and they clattered aboard, groaning when Shanna made them put on life jackets. "We have a student driver," she said, grinning. "Best not to take any chances." We rocked slowly until everyone was comfortable. The girls only laughed. "Relax, sweetheart. I was a hormonal teenager once, and so were you, but much later than I was. They're just having fun. But if they get close again, they're all yours." She thought for a second and went on deck. I heard it echo across the lake, and she came back grinning and adjusting her top. I didn't say a word. We anchored in the cove, and I discovered the best thing on the boat: a sliding board to drive off the side of the boat into the water, and a little pump that fed water to the board to make it easier. Soon they were coming off the board 2 at a time, screaming as they flew up into the air. One little girl kept to herself, and it turned out that she couldn't swim. The others were empathetic enough to suggest they stop, a rather adult thing to do for such small children. But Shanna saved the day. She took the girl to the back of the boat, and she returned a few minutes later wearing a life jacket. Shanna climbed up the ladder with her, and they went down together. I don't know who screamed more, Shanna or Vicky. The cove was pretty shallow with a nice little beach, and we docked at the shore when they got tired of tying them up. We chopped wood and got the cooler out, and soon they were roasting sausages and marshmallows while sipping sodas. Shanna kept Vicky at bay, talking quietly to her, and after a few minutes I looked up when Vicky's dog swam past me. Later we were sitting on the boat with our legs hanging off the side by side, when I walked over and gently kissed her cheek. Her smile lit up the twilight. For what? For helping Vicky. "You're going to be a super mom." Tears came to her eyes, and she jumped out of the boat and swam into the bay, looking out over the canal. When she finally arrived, I helped her untangle the girls, cleaned up after them, made sure the fire was put out, and we slowly swam back to the dock. "Did I do something to offend you? If so, you know I didn't mean it, and I apologize." She stroked my cheek, smiling a gentle smile. "You didn't say anything wrong, sweetie. You just gave me a compliment that no one has ever given me before. I just didn't know how to take it." She leaned against me with her whole body holding my hand. I couldn't remember the last time I'd been so pleased. We had a light dinner that the girls had prepared, insisting that Shanna and I relax, so we sat in camp chairs and snuggled. Shanna told me about her new job. She had co-owned a security firm with 3 of her fellow veterans and seemed to be succeeding, although she didn't enjoy the irregular hours and travel as much as she thought she would. I told her about selling the company, much to her surprise. It doesn't bother me. It all started out as me just trying to help a friend, and Harry and June more or less forcefully dragged me into it. They're good, loyal friends, but I didn't really like it, and money didn't mean that much to me. I just wanted to have enough money to provide a good life for my family and later for my girls. She sighed and took my hand. I know you don't show it, but Charlie hurt you more than you can show. I was married once myself. I loved the guy and considered him my life partner until I came back from a business trip and found out he was divorcing me for what I thought was a good friend, and she was 6 months pregnant. At least he had the decency to wait until I got home, but it still hurt. I was a little shocked. She had never mentioned this before, and it made me sad. Charlie had taught me a lot about pain management so I could understand. We lay in the chairs until dinner was served. I was really glad my girls had learned how to use the grill because most of the others were clueless. Shanna and I did the dishes, and the girls sat around the fire singing along to one of Marissa's friends on the guitar. It sounded good, sitting in the dark with no one around to appreciate your abilities. We tried to wear down the pontoon, and the girls were adamant that we should get one of our own as gifts for both birthdays combined. I did not resist the suggestion in the slightest. I lay there in the tent in the middle of the desert and realized that I was the happiest I had been in a very, very long time and fell asleep with a smile. The girls picked us up, and we went out to face the world. After everything was packed up, we looked around to make sure we had left the campground better than we found it, and left, taking with us memories that will last a lifetime. I'm sure everything had been planned. Marissa got behind the wheel of Shauna's SUV. Another girl got behind the wheel of hers, and Shanna came with me. We drove holding hands, not feeling the need to talk. An hour away from home, Shanna finally spoke. I've been thinking about this for years, to tell you the truth. We could go home, date, dance around how we feel about each other, but I'll cut to the chase and give you some options. You're going to love me. You will marry me. You'll give me a few more children to love besides Star and our girls, and it's a prerequisite that you spend the rest of your life with me. If you object to any of this, I'll get in the car when we get back, drive away, and you'll never see me again. Oh, and by the way, I love you. How do you feel about that? Well, let me think about it. Okay, I've thought about it. Tomorrow we'll go to the jeweler's and find you a ring. And then we, or rather you, will go house hunting. I refuse to start married life in my ex's basement. So the sooner you find our house, the sooner we can get it set up. You might want to bring the girls in for counseling when you've made up your mind. Is that okay? Oh, and to make it official, Shanna Hunter, will you marry me? She sat like that for a few seconds until the tears started. Then the tears were replaced with a smug look. She texted someone and asked me to stop right then and there. I thought the girl driving Marissa's Jeep was about to crash so fast she pulled over. Shanna jumped out of the truck, rushed around, and pulled me out before I could get out myself. Marissa appeared to still be holding her phone, and I looked at the message. Operation was a success. Great job, troops. I looked at her, and she grinned, blushing. Oops, you weren't supposed to see that, she said, hugging me again. I sighed as I closed my computer and thought about it. Today was my 60th birthday. It was my last day of work. I was retiring. I had made a lot of money, and it was time. Darcy turned out to be a cog in math and business, so she started working for Harry when she got her MBA, and 3 years ago she moved to him to learn the business from the ground up before taking over as a global CEO. Marissa followed in my footsteps by getting an engineering degree and specializing in bridge construction, a career that has taken her around the world. She found a life partner, and they adopted 2 little girls, my only grandchildren to date. Darcy was still married to her work, although she seemed to have become very close to an engineer she met through her sister. My musings were interrupted when my wife walked in with our twin daughters in her arms. They were graduating high school soon and had chosen different colleges, wanting to live apart for a change. Shanna was right as always when she told Charlie that we would have beautiful chocolate children. Shanna retired on our wedding day and took over running her company, then sold her share to the others when she found out she was pregnant. Our company was hardly their only client. Harry's empire became huge, and more than once it happened that information revealed to them changed business decisions significantly. She helped me gather the photos on the table, stopping at one of our wedding photos, the one of her with her fiancé. June as matron of honor and 9 bridesmaids, 3 16-year-olds, 3 13-year-olds, and 3 10-year-olds, all in floor-length dresses, elegant and beautiful, wearing dresses showing off combat boots, holding a sign operation successful. We were returning to our home on the lake the same lake where we had vacationed all these years. There were 2 huge pontoons and a speedboat tied to the dock, and all the guys from that trip were frequent visitors bringing their families and talking about Operation Lake, as they called it. I doubted we'd get much privacy, but that was the order of the day. What happened to Charlie? Not that I cared other than how it would affect my children, but the house went to her. To say she wasn't happy would be a very fair statement, but she soon realized that her complaints were going unheeded and dismissed them. What really ticked her off was that there was a house for sale a block away from us, and Shanna decided that was where we would start our family. $500,000 later, she had a house that was written about in magazines. It had a full-size in-ground pool and hot tub, which we enjoyed until it was almost worn out the first year. Custody was never a problem because the girls were within walking distance of each house, although they preferred to stay with us most of the time, especially after their sisters were born. After all, they were almost grown by then. Charlie married twice more. The first one broke up after 2 years because, surprise, surprise, she was caught cheating. Luckily, she had the good sense to get a prenup, so she was protected. Just for fun, Brenda and Barb tracked down the wife and offered her a job. I heard they have the second house open and used the basement as a playroom, so maybe she got what she wanted all those years ago. We see her from time to time, but she's quiet, still harboring resentment. Time has not been as favorable to her as it could have been, and her age is taking its toll. Old habits die hard, I guess, and she still likes the mall better than the gym. Dad, hurry up. If we start now, we'll still have time to swim at the lake for an hour or 2. I picked up my box and walked out with my family to start the best part of my life's journey. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.